So, Trevor, we're going to go over to the defense next, and we're going to talk about the game records on the other side of the ball. And look, this game starts up front for the Notre Dame defense. It starts up front, and it starts up more specifically right in the middle, right in the middle of the offensive line and right in the middle of the defensive line. And in my opinion, this game is going to come down to what do we get from the Notre Dame tackles? What do we get from their stud tackles? Which version of Riley Mills and Howard Cross are going to show up? And I'm using both of them intentionally because it really does come down to the both of them stepping up and playing to their ability, like they did to a degree against Louisville. I thought they were good against Louisville. I thought they were great against Stanford. You're now playing a Georgia Tech offensive line that is pretty solid against the pass. And pretty good against run. I mean, they get good movement. They're not like a massive offensive line, but I'm looking at their Pro Football Focus numbers, Trevor, and they're incredibly impressive. You know, when you look at the things that they do, they're not dominant run blockers. They're pretty dominant pass blockers, but their starting guards have given up one starting guard's given up 3 pressures all season. The other starting guard has given up 6 pressures all season in 7 games. The one tackle, Corey Robinson, has given up 1 pressure all season. The other tackle, or the center, has given up 1 pressure all season. And their other tackle, Jordan Williams, who I think was on my preseason second all-opponent team, has only given up 5 pressures all season. I mean, that's about as much as like Notre Dame's starting left tackle combined. It's close. You know what I mean? But right up the middle especially is going to be key. No matter who plays a quarterback, that's going to be the key. Riley Mills, Howard Cross, and Gabriel Rubio especially. And Donovan Heinisch also, but those 3 especially, because those are the more stout run defenders. Those 3 need to play big games. They need to be game wreckers. Riley Mills played like a maniac against Stanford. I mean, you saw that play I was talking about, right, Trevor? Where he whips the guard and then the tight end tries to take him on and Riley buckles his back and throws him and he gets, you know what I mean? Like they need that from him and Howard Cross. They were great as a duo on Saturday against Stanford. Great. And there were plays where Riley made plays and then Howard cleaned it up. There were plays where Howard just made great individual plays. Like his sack on that 4th down was a phenomenal play. I mean, guy tries to cut him. He whoops him, gets into the backfield, makes a sack. I mean, it's just like that's wrecking a game. I mean, Stanford was moving at that point in time, Trevor. They were balling. And on 1st down, Riley Mills, and I think it was Bryce Young, had a pressure, and then Howard cleaned it up for a sack. And then on 4th down, Howard just, okay, I'm ending this right now. What did we say one of the big issues we had early in the season was? Who's going to be that guy that steps up and says, okay, enough of this. I'm taking this game over. We didn't see that against Northern Illinois. We didn't even see it enough against Miami of Ohio and in other games where they weren't playing great. We saw that against Louisville. There were plays where Riley Mills was like, all right, that's enough of this crap. I got this. There were plays when Howard Cross had that mentality. There were plays when Bryce Young had that mentality. Josh Burnham had that mentality. That needs to happen again, especially up the middle. And I thought Gabriel Rubio for his first game back was really good.
Yeah.
And getting him back is huge because as well as Jason Onye's played, this stretch of games against Stanford, Georgia Tech, and Navy, with their ability to run the football, you want Gabriel Rubio back in your lineup because he's probably your best run defender as far as just eating up space and making plays. That trio especially, and again, Donovan Heinisch too, but this is more specific towards just those beef eaters up the middle. They need to play it there. They need to have a big game. If they dominate this game, I don't know if Georgia Tech has a chance to win. I mean that sincerely. If those 3 guys just dominate this game, and you can throw Donovan in there too, those 4 guys dominate this game the way they're capable of, the way they did against Stanford, and the way they did at times against Louisville, I don't think Georgia Tech has a chance to win unless the Notre Dame offense just gives them the game with a bunch of turnovers.
I'm going to be interested to see how the interior defensive line plays because they have stepped it up, to your point, over the last couple of weeks. And it's been really awesome to watch. And one thing that I pay attention to a lot is like a player's body language when they're playing. And it's even that has gotten better between Howard Cross and Riley Mills the last couple of games. I remember a big thing that I had was Howard Cross got a sack against Miami of Ohio. And he got up and, people were trying to get him riled up around him. And he just kind of got up and was like, and he kind of went back to doing his patented celebrations, like taking the bow after getting the sack. And then you see Riley Mills just, literally bench pressing guys off of the line of scrimmage and getting after the quarterback and getting fired up. And I am going to be interested to see. I hope that wasn't a byproduct of, you did it against the Louisville game a little bit, and because that's a team that embarrassed you on national television in 23, and then you did it against Stanford at home, and that was a team that embarrassed you on national television at home in 22.
It's a rivalry game.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm hoping that it wasn't just that fed into it. I'm hoping that, they turned the corner and they are like, hey, this is why we came back here. We are the dominant force at the origin of this defensive line, the center of this defensive line. So, I'm really hoping that continues, because I agree with you. If the interior defensive line plays well, Georgia Tech, the things that they do well on offense, they're just not going to be able to do, man.
Not
They're
consistently. They may make a run here and a play there, but they're not going to be able to do it consistently against this defense.
Well, and here's the thing, and I said this against about the Louisville game, is when you play against a good team, they're just going to make good plays. They're a good football team. Like that's going to happen. But limiting them doing it with consistency, it's just going to put Georgia Tech in a bind to where this is a defense to where if Notre Dame's offense comes ready to play, like we hope and think that they will, Notre Dame's defense is built to, you just can't, this is, I don't want to say an impossible defense to come back against, but it's hard. It is hard, man.
It's hard. Yeah.
It is hard. It's hard.
Trevor, the thing too is somebody in the chat just said, and I don't disagree with them. They said that the inside linebacker discipline has been good the last two games. And I would argue that the linebackers have probably played two of their best games the last two games.
Sure.
Now, part of that's a byproduct of them getting older, but it's not a coincidence that it also happens to be the two best games that we've seen from Riley Mills and Howard Cross all season either. It's not a coincidence.
100%.
It's not a coincidence at all. So they got to keep that going. But it's not just them, Trevor. Also, with Benjamin Morrison out, you're going to have some pass game matchups you got to be concerned about. The one that there's an obvious one, which we'll get to, but a one that's not a lot of people are talking about is the matchup between Jordan Clark and Malik Rutherford. Now, Jordan Clark has been excellent this season. This is, to my opinion, going to be the toughest test he's faced all season, outside of maybe the Miami of Ohio game. And I would actually even argue it's more than that because the supporting cast around him is better. But Malik Rutherford's a very good football player for Georgia Tech, and he plays most of his time in the slot. Him and Eric Singleton are about the same. Eric Singleton's played about 30 or so snaps in the slot. Most of it's outside, and it's flipped for Malik Rutherford, which means their top pass catcher is going to be matched up all game or a lot of the game against Jordan Clark. The other thing, too, is they don't just line him up in the slot and say, have at it, Hoss. They move him around a lot. He's going to do a lot of jets. He's going to do a lot of motions. He's going to do a lot of movement. He's going to run a lot of crossers, things that have given Notre Dame a lot of problems this year structurally. Jordan Clark is going to have to play another great game. Otherwise, Malik Rutherford's the kind of kid that can really make you pay. And so that's my second game record matchup there is it's Malik Rutherford's capable of really wrecking the game for you, especially when you consider some of the struggles Notre Dame has had with teams that do a lot of motion. He's not just a guy that does stuff after the catch. He also will beat you down the field. He had a big play down the field vertically against Georgia Tech or against Louisville, excuse me. And, this is a kid that's got 200-yard games so far this year, Trevor. This is a very talented football player. And for the opposite side is if Jordan Clark is a game record for Notre Dame, it's going to be almost impossible for Georgia Tech to really hurt Notre Dame consistently throwing the ball if he shuts down Malik Rutherford. I'm not saying he needs to completely shut him down, but you can pretty much neutralize him. This Georgia Tech offense is going to be a little bit more stagnant, especially if Haynes King doesn't play, because backup quarterbacks love throwing the ball to their slots and their tight ends. We see that all the time. And they love focusing on the leading receiver, and right now he is their leading receiver. So this is a huge matchup in this game.
Agreed. I've praised Jordan Clark all year about his open field tackling ability, and I think that's going to have to be on display on Saturday, because what Georgia Tech does really well with their speedy, smaller receivers is they like to get players chasing. I mean, just go back and watch the Louisville film, and they like to get them in space. And Jordan Clark, up to this point this year, has done a really good job of tackling in space. So we're going to be, I'm going to be very interested to see how he does with that and how he does covering in space, because Brent Key is going to try to do a really good job of getting him into space and getting matchups on safeties and getting matchups on Jordan Clark, because there is I don't want to say a 0% chance, but there's no way that they just say, all right, guys, go out against Leonard Moore, who's 6'2", and Christian Gray, who's 6 foot, and just go up and try to get jump balls all day. There's no way. So
Well, that's not who they are. They're 5'9"
right.
and 5'11".
Right.
You know, like Notre Dame's, like Jordan Clark's the only guy that's not towers over the pass catchers for Georgia Tech. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
But you want to get that slot chasing. And Jordan Clark's a very good football player. He's not a burner.
Nope.
And so that's an area where you say, can they get him in some matchups where they can take advantage? Or does he counter and say, hey, I'm locking you down today? That's going to be a huge, huge part of this matchup.
Yep.
And then the other one, Trevor, when you look at it, is going to be the one that everyone's talking about. And that's going to be Eric Singleton matched up against Leonard Moore and Christian Gray. For the most part, I'm more concerned about the Leonard Moore aspect of it. Now, they mix their receivers up. They don't just play Z, slot, X. I mean, you'll see Malik, you'll see Leonard Moore. You'll see Eric Singleton playing in the boundary. You'll see him playing to the field, especially when they push the tempo. They kind of just, wherever you ended the last play, you start there. There's going to be a lot of matchups where Leonard Moore is going to be matched up against Eric Singleton. I think that the Ja'Cory Brooks matchup and the Colin Lacey, but especially the Ja'Cory Brooks matchup, was right in Leonard Moore's wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Big, tall guy that's going to run vertical. Well, that's what Leonard Moore does best. This is a little different. This is going to be you're going to run some screen game, some quick game. They're going to do things to try to get him in space. Shorter guys tend to be a little shiftier than taller guys. They're going to try to do some things with double moves to try to go at him. They're not just going to run go balls on him all day. I mean, they may try that a time or two, but they're going to try to do things to get him chasing, make him defend double moves, make him defend outside pressure or outside push where they whip the slant inside, pivot routes, things where he's got to think, where he's got to execute high level of technique that if he doesn't, gets their receivers the ball in space. That's what they're going to do. And they're going to try to get some catch and run opportunities against him. He's going to have to be prepared for all that. So that matchup between him against Eric Singleton is going to be a big one. I think that the bigger receivers he should match up relatively well against. It's these two matchups: Jordan Clark against Malik Rutherford, Leonard Moore against Eric Singleton. That, in a lot of ways, is going to determine just how good this Georgia Tech offense can be. If Notre Dame takes this matchup over and these guys play like game wreckers, again, we talk about it, Georgia Tech may not get to 10 points.
Right.
You know, if all the game records we talk about for Notre Dame wreck the game, they may not get to 10 points, or they may not get beyond 13 to 14 points. But if they are moving the ball on Notre Dame, if they're going to pull off an upset in this game, it's because their game records in these matchups are the ones making plays. And you know, that's what I'm looking for. It's going to be a very fascinating aspect of this.
100%. I agree completely.
So, Trevor, the final piece of this kind of looking at this matchup is going to be when you think about the matchups aspect of it. I am very fascinated to see the OC Buster Faulkner against Al Golden. That is going to be very interesting, man, because you've got this young. I say young. He's not like Garrett Riley young, but you have this guy who's 43. He's kind of come up the ranks. He's never really been at this kind of level. He was a quality control coach at Georgia from 20 to 2022. He was OC at Southern Miss and Arkansas State. Now he's here at Georgia Tech running a pretty darn good offense. And a guy that I'm trying to think of, what's the name of that? Chris Hatcher. He's a Chris Hatcher disciple from Valdosta State, who was long been considered a great offensive mind in college football. I believe he played at Valdosta State. No, he played at Valdosta State, coached several years at Valdosta State. This is a guy, Trevor, that is doing some really good things. And he does things that naturally have given Al Golden and his defense problems with motions and shifts and tempo and all those type of things, right? What does Notre Dame do to counter that? What's their answers for that? What's their answers for some of the things that Georgia Tech is going to try to do? I am fascinated thinking about what this matchup between OC at Georgia Tech and Al Golden and the DC and the defensive staff at Notre Dame is going to look like. It's going to be very fascinating.
Well, and when you factor in the injuries that Notre Dame has had on the defensive side of the ball too, it's going to be a really good chess match. One, just from a Notre Dame perspective, what Al Golden is going to do to help out some of those younger guys and what he's going to do to try to generate pressure on Haynes King or the backup if he's elected to go. So then you factor in what Buster Faulkner is able to do with this Georgia Tech offense. It's going to be a really fun chess match to sit back and watch. It's kind of similar to the conversation we had against the Louisville game against Jeff Brom versus Al Golden. So far, Al Golden has shown that he is a really, really strong defensive mind, and I'm going to be interested to see what he cooks up on Saturday.
So, Trevor, that's going to do it for the game wrecker section. We're going to finish up there. We're going to hit that like button, folks. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Share this podcast. Give us a 5-star review. And, of course, as always, sign up for the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com.